When Saskatoon doctor Kavi Chatoorgoon isn't doing surgery, he can be found in the kitchen whipping up delicious baking creations, and these skills have now landed him on the latest edition of the Great Canadian Baking Show, which airs this Sunday. Kavi is competing against 9 others for the coveted title on the reality show. So to find out more about his journey and the show itself, he joins us now in studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay, I have to ask how you got into baking in the first place.
That's a common question. I've been baking for a long time, but really ramped up during the pandemic. Started bread and started taking where I lived before. I was down the street from a big bakery and sort of a bakery school, so I would take lessons there just to brush up on skills, and then that kind of got me hooked. Once you start seeing results, it's hard to go back.
You're a surgeon by day, we'll say. How does your medical background impact your baking? I mean, we were talking about this earlier. You know, baking can be so precise, and I imagine being a surgeon is the same. So how does it kind of impact?
I think there's a lot of similarities. In a lot of ways, surgery is a lot like a recipe. There are certain steps you're following, but there are also adjustments you make depending on how things turn out. So it's not that different than baking. Obviously, there's a little bit more creativity in baking, but sometimes, especially in pediatric surgery, there's a lot of creativity because you don't always know what you're going to find, and you kind of have to sort it out at the time and kind of come up with a solution. So it's, again, not that different, but obviously very different.
You talk about how you kind of found this love for baking in the midst of the pandemic. We all know how heavy that time was on healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. Do you think baking's kind of a refuge from the intensity of your occupation?
Definitely. It's nice to use a different part of your brain. And at least when I'm baking, I find it's sort of like like playing music or anything, the focusing on the task helps you to push away other things going on. And so it's a good way to kind of leave work at work and focus on something that will hopefully be delicious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have a great outcome.
Yes.
A delicious outcome.
Yes.
How did this appearance on the Great Canadian Baking Show, though, come about?
So I moved back to Canada. I was in the U.S. for almost 15 years, and I moved back to Canada about almost 3 years ago and started watching the Canadian show. We couldn't see it in the U.S. We were watching the British one in the U.S. And when we moved to Canada, we started going through all the seasons in the Canadian one and loving it. It's obviously a little different than a British, but still has the overall feel of camaraderie and just, heartwarming show. And at one point, it was actually my wife who suggested I applied, and I was like, never thought about it, had never considered applying for the show, never thought of it as an option, as a possibility. And so she mentioned it as we were sitting on the couch watching the show, and I pulled up my laptop and realized that, applications close in a week. This was a few years ago now, and so I applied and made it much further in the process than I thought that year, and then applied again, and then a third time, and a third time was the charm.
And what was the experience like filming the show?
It was very interesting. It was of course very intense. It's a very intense show just because of the time crunch and a lot of factors that are out of control, but it was also a really amazing place to be. The cast and the crew were just really, I wasn't expecting how warm and nice everyone would be, and just trying to help you to be the best you could be. It didn't matter what it was. If I said, last minute, I would really like this ingredient, they would run and get it for me. And,
oh, wow.
And so it was an amazing crew to work with. And of course, the bakers were amazing too. I kind of had a feeling that I'd be making 9 new friends across the country. But wasn't expecting to also enjoy meeting the crew and just working with them in the tent. Yeah.
So that camaraderie that you get, that sense of just watching the show, it translates into actually being on the show, you'd say.
Absolutely. I think the cast overall enjoy working in the show more than most because it's such just a nice, fun, happy show where there's a lot of baked goods around, and so
How
yeah,
can you
they have a
not
good
be
time.
happy?
Exactly, exactly. There's always something to eat for sure.
Have you ever been in a competition like that before?
Never been in anything like that before. So this was a big shift for me, very big.
So what's more stressful, being in the OR or being on the competition floor?
I don't know how to answer that. I think that being in the competition is in some ways more stressful just because I haven't spent like 20 years training for it. I had been training for surgery for a long time, and so there's a lot, the whole process helps to build confidence. Not to say there aren't times when I stay up late thinking about a case and worrying about the next day, but it's not the same sort of stress. And so this was very intense. And the other thing is if a case is taking longer, it takes longer. In a bake, the time just stops. You have to have something done by then. So that's hard too.
Well, and on the opposite side too, I mean, if your baking doesn't go well at the end of the day, it's just a treat. Whereas like in the OR, the risk is a lot higher.
It can be. That's true. I have to say, I think all of us still took it really seriously because I guess if you've worked this hard to be on the show and you're of the type to enter the show, you take it very seriously. And it was interesting to me to be in a competition where you felt like you weren't competing against other people, you were just competing with yourself. And so that meant that, other people helped you if you were short or you needed help, or you were sad when people were kicked out of the tent.
Yeah.
Even though you knew that that's the way the show works and it could be you next week. And it's a very odd situation that you're in this competition, but you're not really competing with the others, or at least it doesn't feel like you're competing with the others.
We only have a few seconds left here, but I just want to ask, no spoilers, but were you happy with your performance?
Yes, overall, I'm happy. I had certain things in mind that I wanted to be able to do, and I was able to do that. There were some things I wish I could have done better. I think that's true of anything. But overall, really thankful for the opportunity and the experience. It's definitely something I'm never going to forget.
Well, we're excited to watch and cheer you on, but thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah.